Hey guys, what's up? It's New. Today I want to address the most common question for the better part of a week now. How do you generate power charges? Or better yet, how do you generate so many power charges? I'm going to start this video by showcasing some gameplay footage of a very typical moment when I get asked that question in chat. It's during a breach on the build I'm running, which is a cast on freeze, flicker, strike, lightning warp character. We're going to take a look at how that works in a second. But you can see I'm generating power charges 1, 2, 3, or even 6 at a time. You can see that on the buff bar there with the blue circle. As you would have seen in the thumbnail, that's what it is. And then you're also going to see, if you can catch it, some purple ground effects in the ground, and that is Profane Ritual going off constantly. It's very interesting because you can't actually generate power charges while flicker striking, yet I'm doing it very often. And so these get fed in the in-between moments. Sometimes I get to keep my power charges during a flicker strike, but as you can see, I'm fully keeping that buff up for charged staff, or at least till the breach is over. And I was able to flicker many, many times, constantly just recycling them. Yeah, but I even got one at the very end. Okay, so I show you that just so you can have a really good understanding about what's possible in terms of how many charges can be gained at a given time. That was pretty good representation. I mean, the breach could have been better, could have had maybe a little bit better RNG, but I mean, I'm satisfied with that showcase. And so I present it to you, and now you know about as good as it can get, at least for the character I'm running. I've tested a lot of this, so I believe that is the single best method. I'm going to break it down for you right now. And then we're also going to look at the entire compendium of potential ways to generate power charges, yes, including the Resonance Keystone with Frenzy charges. And so I want this to be a sort of one-stop shop for anyone who has a question about power charges. I'm going to try to include everything, every single possible way that you can do it. There's really not that many different ways here. 1 week into the early access, there are a couple of specialized pieces of gear, which we'll save at the very end. Anyway, I have 2 cast on freeze links. Yes, you can do 2 at a time, and they obey one another. I do not believe they get in the way of each other. It just can be a problem if you don't have the spirit or if you don't have the mana to support them. We're just going to be looking at this one right here, which has Profane Ritual. Okay, now Profane Ritual will attempt to pull the do something on the ground effect where a corpse is, and it will siphon the power charge from that corpse. You can have multiples of these on the ground at once, especially if you use this in an invocation rather than cast on freeze, but you'll certainly get at least one when it spins over. And if you are using a cast on one, it will actually hold the energy until it's available to do it, so long as you have only Profane Ritual in here. Now, if you try to combine it with another one, which I used to do, you'll lose that opportunity. You'll have to keep trying each time it hits 100. But it's a really good idea to leave Profane Ritual by itself. And again, this is kind of a hefty cost to pay because it is 60 spirit just devoted to one. But on the flip side, we get to put all the great supports in here. These 3 are going to be really good. Profusion will give me a chance to get an extra one. A lot of people know about that one. And these 2 are especially good. They could go down to the bottom one, but it's busy performing other roles, which I'm not going to get into in this video. But yeah, Profane Ritual, really strong, and it's especially good for Flicker Strike because I cannot gain a power charge during Flicker. It needs to be in between the moment. So this works out really well because there's a little bit of a delay, and the charges come flooding in right after flickering, generally. And I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe in the event that I flicker immediately after, I lose the opportunity to get the charge, perhaps. Or maybe if it's mid-airborne, because you actually see the charge come in through the air. If it's mid-airborne already, it still comes in, I guess. A little bit hard to explain. Or maybe it's bugged and it's just not working as intended. Far be it for me to know. I just know it works really, really well. Now, let's look at all the remaining ways to get power charges. There is no support gem that can get you power charges or frenzy charges. However, what we're going to do here, that's a really useful tool for you, you can type it in the search bar here, go to all gems. And if you use the quotations, it will only search for power charges. All right, so this is the entire list of power charge capable abilities, skill gems. Now, most of these, or at least half of these, are for spenders only. The ones that are for generating would be a couple in the Monk's Arsenal, no, Killing Palm, Siphoning Strike, and Profane Ritual. So let's start with Killing Palm. So any Invoker Monk definitely knows what this skill is. You get it at level 1. And it's fine. It's the only way to get power charges. It requires culling the enemy. Not particularly great. It's definitely not going to work, on a boss, ever, unless you have ads or something. But yeah, this is just one particular way, and is not a way that I've really used ever since being in Act 1. I've just kind of written it off, but not going to throw it under the bus. It does exist, so it gets a mention. Siphoning Strike is actually a skill that I use down here. I think it's the most controversial skill of the build. There would be some other things you could do, but I am able to pretty reliably shock enemies, and I do get extra shocks down. I don't know if that was in the showcase for the breach. However, especially when there's shocked ground, this is extremely strong because you can rip the shock off and the enemy remains shocked, which with whatever effect the shock ground has. Even if there's no shock ground, you may want the power charge more than the shock at that given time. This is especially true single target on bosses, and so I really like this. It also does a teleport or a dash that allows me to close the gap, which is really nice if I can't Flicker Strike at that moment. And then we have the big daddy one here, Profane Ritual, and this wouldn't necessarily require you to be a monk or have a particular weapon, quarterstaff, unarmed, or whatever. This can be done pretty much by anybody. And I'm not really sure what other builds are out there that would want to do this, but it looks like power charges are basically just for the monk or some minion things. Next up we got Spirit Gems. There are a few in here for power charge, so we'll do it once again. Or sorry, just one. Lingering Illusion. Now, this is one that everybody saw right away and thought maybe it would be good. Turns out to be the, kind of a meme, and I could see this being maybe useful on like a boss fight that you are actually prepping for, and it has like some sort of, you know, highly telegraphed slam or something. You can just always get a power charge this way. I've technically never used it, but yeah, it's something that exists, and I've been told by other members of the community it's not very good. Again, perhaps a very high skill, big brain person could make high use of this, but I've not seen it to be worth 30 spirit for sure. Now, we're not quite finished with the power charge conversation. We got to now talk about frenzy charges, because frenzy charges are going to play a role for power charges if you are somewhere near the Resonance Keystone, which you almost certainly would be as a monk. I'm actually not that close to it. It took me 5 points, but I have experimented a little bit with this, and this is something people really love to tout as a viable or perhaps even the superior way to get power charges. I have a difference of opinion, at least for my build, but again, including every possible way, we're definitely going to talk about it. So now you can see just from this Keystone that you can generate power charges even if you generate frenzy charges instead. And yes, that will keep the benefit of things like Lust for Power and other power charge effects otherwise. It does mean, however, you cannot generate power charges through Siphoning Strike or Profane Ritual anymore. Those would be dead in the water. At any rate, we're going to go back in here. And now we're going to do Frenzy. Charge. Alright, now you can obviously see this is bow themed. We got a spender, 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 and one generator here, Sniper's Mark. Now this is an interesting one. It definitely has some potential for a build. I don't think it's going to work good for mine because it would go off so quickly and I'd be in the middle of flicker striking. Haven't technically tested this one. I'm not a crit build either, but I could see in a world, you know, down the line, if my gear starts to get really good and I'm able to diversify some of those points into crit, get a very good crit build, which would probably be the ultimate in-game setup. If not, and or including Magic Find. It's going to be hard to fit all those stats in. This definitely could play a role. And incidentally, the other link that I had featured a freezing mark, which was going off constantly. You might need to re-roll the tape to see it. It's a little bit hard to tell when the freezing mark goes off. It's like a big icy explosion, bigger than Herald of Ice, which was included in there. But the mark goes off too whenever that free cast on freeze cycles over, as long as there's any target in range, which I mean it generally is. So as the target gets marked and killed immediately after, the Sniper's Mark could really be viable in that context. However, we got one more, I believe. Sometimes you gotta click all gems first. And this is the most popular one that everybody likes to comment on, Combat Frenzy, which is certainly a viable way, super reliable, so long as you have some way to freeze, electrocute, or pin. Ironically, the build I'm running is extraordinarily proficient at freezing and electrocuting, but there's a huge stipulation there. No more than once every 5.4 seconds. Now, if you saw the footage at the beginning, you know that I'm getting more than one power charge, or more than two for that matter, through Profane, or through Profusion. I'm getting a lot more than one or two power charges every 5.4 seconds. But this would come in almost constantly for free. I wouldn't have to, rely on some sort of like cast on freeze or an invocation or something like that. Would still have to attack enemies. And this is obviously excellent for boss scenarios. Certainly more reliable than my setup for boss scenarios. So I could see somebody running a build like mine and wanting to maybe respec into this. I don't think it's actually going to be that necessary. I got a bit of a convoluted approach on mine. Includes, just shocking the boss or freezing the boss, and then it drops a lightning warp shock ground. Then I can peel them off one at a time with Siphoning Strike, or two at a time with Siphoning Strike, and that will work really, really well for me. But this is certainly a way you can make it work. And one more thing, you can actually combine those two methods, the friendly charge methods, with Resonance, and that would certainly be an interesting one to do. It would cost you 30 spirit, and it would cost you your mark, and then you'd have to electrify and or freeze, and then also crit enemies, which isn't asking a whole lot for a monk, I don't think. But you would have a double whammy. You would get like a really, really reliable one, and then depending on how you were doing marks, if you're doing it through Hand of Chayula, or especially if you're doing it like, recycling through a cast on freeze or a meta gem of some kind, I could definitely see a scenario where you could rack up quite a few. And if you're dead set on using the Resonance approach, I would recommend trying to do both, even if you have a kind of a low crit chance. But, think about it. It's definitely a hard decision to make because, again, you're sacrificing spirit as well as a mark. And do bear in mind, I'm also sacrificing spirit, actually 60 spirit. But to me, the payoff is definitely worth it. All right, so we're almost done with the video, but we're going to take a look at a couple of interesting items because there are a few specialized unique items that can generate power charges. Nothing to be offered in terms of weapons or other uniques like jewelry or whatnot for either power or frenzy charges through the Resonance Keystone. However, armor, body armor in particular, has something interesting to offer. We got Vol's Protector Ironclad Vestment, 25% chance to gain a power charge on critical hit. Now, anyone who's played PoE1 knows that's extraordinarily reliable. More reliable than anything you just saw me do early on. If you had even a small amount of crit for as much and often AoE hits, all that stuff, this is just going to make power charges come absolutely flooding in. Honestly, a real incredible armor there, even with just stats that are otherwise dead. Now, you might think I would be going for this, and it's probably available. I haven't actually checked trade because I'm not personally very interested in this, given that it has 0 evasion. And I'm not going to go into details about that, but just check the ascendancy points, some of the notables. Evasion is king for the monk. And the armor piece is by far the most important piece for the monk if you are spec'd for it in the ascendancy, which I think pretty much everybody is who's trying to get in the end game. You're going to need that additional physical damage reduction. Check out the monk's ascendancy points if you don't know what I'm talking about. But that armor is basically dead in the water to me, but hey, going through the entire list, this is all we know so far. This is PoE2DB, by the way. It's an excellent resource for checking gems for all the different modifiers that can roll on items. We don't know weightings for different things, but I love this resource. They're doing a great job populating it up. Yeah, we got one more armor here, but it's a really quirky one here. 20% chance to gain a power charge on hit, but lose all power charges when reaching the maximum. Kind of weird. And then it shocks you when you reach your maximum. I'm not really sure how to play with that. It would take a really, really methodical gameplay. I don't want to try to really get into that. Then we got Power Tread Hunting Shoes, which is certainly an interesting one. Definitely going to be, I think, a popular pick for anyone running a power charge build. Absolutely hate the fact that it's missing a full-blown 20% movement speed, or at least 15% movement speed with the perfect corruption and roll, compared to what you can get on rares. And the rolls are kind of bad otherwise, but it does have the max charge and then crit bonus, so there are maybe some situations probably decent for bossing if you didn't need any resistance there. Frenzy charge is the only other thing to look at, and we got Dark Ray Vectors, a classic one from PoE1. Doesn't actually give you any frenzy charges on kill or hit or anything like that. So guys, that is the entire list. That is literally, as far as I know, every single way you can even possibly gain power charges in this game. Currently, a week into the early access. Please let me know if I'm wrong in the comments. And, I'd really appreciate if you guys would just ask me one more time, because I'm afraid now that I've made the video, I'm not going to get asked this question anymore. So definitely comment down below. How do you generate power charges? How do you generate so many power? I want to hear it one more time. So if you watched all the way through this video, please comment down below one more time just so I can get my filling in one last time. I feel like I haven't been asked that question enough. Just not enough, guys. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Pretty much just keeping it a wrap there. Highly informative one. I'm going to start coming out with more videos that are really kind of deep diving into some of the tech that I'm using. It's all kinds of interesting things, including the meta skill setup and variety of things. So look forward to that. In the meantime, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video or online on Twitch if you're there.